Yeah, so I do remember when we were kids, the gardener, for instance, will call my mom Miss Chin. And, there was nothing weird about that. But then when we would go out, we would go out to town, we'd go into the store and they would say, hey, Miss Chin. And after a while, people would call my mom by her name, which was, my name, the Chins. We were the Chins. I thought she was famous, and then it turns out everyone, because there were so many Chinese Jamaicans in Kingston, especially, that's what everyone called Chinese people. They called them Mr. Miss Chin, Mr. Chin, or Miss Chin, and I guess we weren't famous, but yeah.
I always knew there were Chinese people in Jamaica because of my father's family. However, I never knew their history or the general history of the Chinese diaspora in the Caribbean. When I read that Mr. Chin was a nickname for Chinese in Jamaica, and being a Miss Chin myself, I really wanted to dissect the truth behind that stereotype and where that nickname came from and what it meant. I didn't even know which Chinese were in Jamaica, what Chinese specifically I descended from. So that's kind of where I began.
Most of the Jamaican Chinese are Hakka people.
Did you grow up knowing you were Hakka? Was that different?
No, but it was that time in college when I started looking at it and asking questions. That came up. Because I knew my parents understood some Chinese. And then I remember in college when I realized, that's how ignorant I was. It's like, wait, there are different Chinese languages? There's Cantonese and Mandarin? And I remember going back and going, so what do we speak? Do we speak Cantonese or Mandarin? They go, oh, we don't even speak those. We I go, what do you mean? They go, the dialect we speak is Hakka.
Are we Hakka Chinese? Are you Hakka Chinese?
Yes, we are the Hakka. We have the Hakka culture. That is in the most southern China, where all the Hakka people migrated down to southern China. And my parents and grandparents spoke a dialect called Hakka. We understood it when we were young. Couldn't speak it too fluent though.
They were like nomads. We are nomads.
The influx of Chinese people. They all come from the same area, and they're almost all related. We had all the Chins living in Montego Bay area, all the Lins in the Black River area, all the Williamses in the Westmoreland area. There was a mixture in Kingston, and then off to Los Angeles, Miami, Toronto, Vancouver. That's where they all went.
Jamaica, of all the Caribbean islands, has the highest Hakka population.
Right.
Like in Trinidad and in Guyana, they're more mixed. Like they have people from different ethnic groups, because China has like 50 ethnic groups. But in Jamaica, everybody's from one area, and the area's not that big.
Right.
And that's in southern China. So that was something that was really interesting for me as an anthropologist, because it's a distinct factor. It's like I'm not only a part of like a Chinese diaspora, but specifically I see myself as more connected to being Hakka.
Yeah. The the Chinese indentured laborers that came in the very first batch in 1854, most of them came over in a very poor state of health because they'd been exposed to almost starvation in Panama for the bunch that had worked on the railroad there, and then the ones coming directly to Jamaica had a very long and stressful voyage coming here. So very few of them apparently survived or stayed. There's very few records of what happened to that group. The next big group that came in 1884 got dispersed throughout the countryside to all the sugar plantations, and we have fairly good records of who went where. The CBA was formed in about 1891. Its function was to represent the Chinese community, a sort of a self-help association. Almost immediately after their period of indentureship was up, they went into this little niche of being a small grocer out in those small communities. Because remember, this is not very long after emancipation, when all the foodstuffs and all the supplies necessary for the then slave population would have been provided by the plantations. All of a sudden, those workers now had to buy their own stuff, and needed the distribution mechanism for that to occur. Through just being in the right place at the right time, the Chinese established themselves in that niche of the small village grocer and, to a small extent, credit provider. The CBA had this commission some time ago, and it's the three things depicted are the lychee, pak choy, and ackee. So ackee is a distinctively Jamaican fruit, lychee distinctively Chinese, and pak choy is widely consumed in both. So this was the merger of the two cultures.
That's Auntie Jerry. My tie.
Thanks. This is our latest newsletter.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Every 3 or so months, we do have one.
How much for one of these books?
Yeah, I could tell them in there.
They're all stacked up over there.
Who is the author of this book? Because,
Yes, but I don't want the second one. I want this one because I am in this one.
Oh, no, they have that.
I don't remember a lot, actually.
Yeah, 'cause you were young.
But you know, it was like a time of change. There was a lot of people leaving at the time.
I mean, I was a kid then, so I don't really remember that much of it, but I can remember going to the supermarket with my mom as a kid in those times, and there not being anything on the shelves.
That move was very it was traumatic in a way, you know. I hear a lot of these similarities from Cubans in Miami. Yeah, when they've left their families or they've had to separate because of political divisions. Exactly. Not willingly, but because they had to leave. I mean, in our case, we had to leave too. Right. It was just not safe to be here. Right. I don't think it's a unique immigrant experience. I think it's something we all share, because I'll get together with Cubans, Nicaraguans, Puerto Ricans, anybody that has had to leave their homeland, and you hear very similar things. Right.
We got married, had our 3 children in Jamaica, and eventually had to leave. All this because of our Prime Minister, Michael Manley, who was very chummy with Fidel Castro of Cuba. And not many people like that. Michael Manley made a speech that said, there are 3 flights leaving Kingston for Miami. Whoever would like to leave can do so. Thank heaven he allowed us to take our items. We could fill a container, one of these sea containers, we could take anything we want in these containers and take it to Miami.
We thought that Jamaica was going democratic socialist.
The literacy program is changed. The recognition of women's rights is changed. The 40-hour work week for government workers is changed. The Workers' Bank that is coming.
As Mr. Michael Manley was walking hand in hand with Castro from Cuba, and we were sending people over to Cuba to learn, but for whatever reason, to learn things, to come back here to interrupt our system. About 30,000 Chinese people left Jamaica.
Initially, when my brothers left, was like a year or two before, and I saw where no, they're panicking, which I could understand. But I looked at the situation and said, no, it's not as bad as it seems. But then again, they all left.
Because of Castro in Cuba and the return of some of the more experienced politicians who got their experience in England, especially people like Prime Minister Manley, and he came back with, I think, good ideas. Looking back at it now, he wanted for the good of the people, but there were so many things that was scary about him.
Yes, Manley time I left, you know. Manley time, no tourists come in Montego Bay, you know, the whole place empty.
That's right.
So that's from 1972
from 1973 start.
73 to 77? 80?
79.
79.
79.
Okay, and then you left when?
I left in 77, I think.
77, okay.
Yeah, that time most of the Chinese left already.
Right.
Everybody left already. All you gone already.
And then you went to?
I went to
St. Thomas.
St. Thomas because Alice told me that St. Thomas still good.
I knew the lady across the street who was a pharmacist, and her brother was a politician, and she would whisper to me that, you know, things are happening. And overnight, she and her sister left. I said, why are they running and we're still here? And I knew this American girl who was a Peace Corps person, and she had married a Jamaican politician. And she said to me one day, you are not going to like this place in a year or two. In other words, get out of here. If you don't like it now, you're not going to like it anymore in 2 years' time. And it was frightening that people were whispering about what was going on in Jamaica.
I left before I left alone, and I started to do business there. I said, let Lulu run the one in Montego Bay and let me see how we stay there. And the first week, I do better than Montego Bay already. And no goods enough. Only the goods that I buy. And I go every Thursday around going town and start buying goods.
It was during the war,
Manley time.
1 year, I went to have lunch with my friends on Harbour Street, which is in downtown Kingston. And after leaving the luncheon and getting to my car, which was parked on Water Lane, a one-way street lane, I took my car and I was going forward when I noticed another car coming opposite me. He was braking the one-way, and I said, this is a one-way street. And he said, riot on Harbour Street. So I quickly put my car in reverse, went right back to the spot where I was parked, and dashed into this back of the store. They quickly closed the doors, and while we were inside, we could hear the rioters walking, and they came knocking on the shutters of that store. And beside that store was a Swiss store that had all the jewelry and the glass. And you could hear all the glass breaking. It was such a terrified experience. I was so scared. That was one incident that made me wanted to leave Jamaica.
I left when I was little. I was like 11. It wasn't until I actually went to university that I saw a documentary about Michael Manley. I was mesmerized, like so many people in Jamaica at that time who voted him into power. And so I went home and I called my mommy and I said, "Mommy, why did we leave Jamaica?" And she laughed and she said, "Why are you saying this?" And I said, "Because Michael Manley's so incredible. He was an incredible spokesperson and orator." But you know, he saw a different side. He lived in the country,
Westmoreland.
in Westmoreland, and it was very different there.
I mean, I was older. I was reading the newspaper. I knew what was going on in terms of politics, plus the violence that was going on.
Right,
that was really, really bad. I mean, it's, you know, we've had, had a bunch of neighbors get shot. I mean, I was held up as a kid.
Really?
Yeah.
We were visiting a family not far from us. We had dinner, we were sitting around, there were about 8 chairs, and we were all sitting around talking when 2 Jamaican fellows that jumped over the veranda, which is fairly low, and said, "Get on the floor." So I got on the floor and my 2 boys got on the floor with me, but there was not enough space for everybody to get on the floor. It was just frightening because they took all our wallets, all our money, and the lady of the house, she lost it, went into her room, came back with a bunch of money and gave it to them. And she lay down beside me. I said, "Pat, be quiet." So after a while, they left. So everybody sat up, and it's like, I was angry. I was saying, why didn't one of the men, get up and punch these 2 guys? But you're so frightened, you can't do anything.
So the guy comes in and demanded money. He was going to kill the lady if he didn't get the chest, the safe. But she gave him some money and he went away. But I mean, then the neighbor up the street got shot. And so, I mean, a lot of stuff was going on. I'd seen this as a kid.
Right.
It's like, okay, let's go. Let's get out of here.
Were you?
I was 12.
And then we heard that other friends, they were cowering in their home because there were gunshots being fired at them through the window. Some good friends. So they also left not long after.
I appreciate Mr. Manley telling us to leave the country.
So there were all kinds of stories about why people left, but a lot of business people left. They took their children and they left, but a lot have come back. Things have changed.
I remember being in Florida. We moved to Florida in the 70s, and I actually remember that fondly. It was about middle school time, and I started middle school in Miami, Florida. My family stayed there for about a year. We had another family there, and then my parents and my little brother, who was a baby at the time, left after about a year to California, and left us there with some aunts and my sister and I, and we stayed there for another year, and then finally moved to California after 2 years total.
Because about probably 40% of the Chinese population emigrated in the 70s, the new Chinese who have arrived in the last 20 years probably outnumber the Chinese that were here from 100 years ago.
Yeah, there are a number of reasons and diverse reasons why there are these sort of distinctions made between older and newer immigrants. And partly it has to do with power and who is credited with establishing the niche in the adoptive home. And those who establish the niche tend to feel like they have the most power and agency, and how the social and economic contours of the ethnic community should look, right? Because they were the first to define it, essentially. And not saying that that system of evaluation is fair, but it's kind of what happens, right?
There are a lot of what we call new Chinese people who came in over the last 5 years. The government of Jamaica at that time was the People's National Party, and they signed some agreement that the Jamaican government would allow 200,000 Chinese people to come and live in Jamaica, and they gave them what would you call it now, concessions, that they didn't have to pay any taxes for 5 years. But it's like the 5 years passed by and they put somebody else in the store, and another 5 years would run and they still would not be paying any taxes.
Whereas many of them are trying to stay as Chinese as possible. Their children are growing up learning patois. And I think that many of them are going to end up staying and are going to be assimilated in the Jamaican melting pot as well.
The moment of migration matters, right? Both in terms of the history and political environment in China at the time, but also in Jamaica, right?
I thought, it shouldn't happen because it affects our business. So I wrote this letter and I showed it to a couple of friends. And one friend said, "Oh, no, don't send that to the government. Because remember, your ancestors came just like this." I said, "No, they did not. They didn't have these concessions."
And then, of course, as you pointed out, language matters. Those who can still speak a language versus those who cannot.
They're strangers. They don't speak the language. They don't try to speak the language. And most of them open little shops all over Jamaica, and they don't hire Jamaicans. They don't mix with the Jamaicans, as far as I know.
When I'm talking to other Chinese Americans, or maybe folks that were born in China or Taiwan that are now here, one of the first things they realize is I don't speak Chinese. And one of the ways I get to justify that, or not justify, but just kind of explain that is, but I was born in Jamaica. Because that's like a thing. If you don't speak Chinese and you're Chinese, that's like a deficit, or like, and saying that you're from Jamaica kind of explains some of it, I guess. It's not as an excuse so much as, no, this is who I am, this is why, Not that I just don't see myself as that, even though it's odd, it's interesting. Like, there is some comfort there, knowing when you're around folks like that there's, and it's different than when we go down to Monterey Park, you're surrounded by Chinese. I don't feel that same sense of belonging, so we're kind of in a couple different worlds, yeah.
I'm proud to be Chinese Jamaican. So they look at you and say, "Jamaican? You're not Jamaican." "Yes, I'm Jamaican."
I think of myself as Jamaican Chinese and not Chinese Jamaican. I really don't feel that I have that much ties to China itself, but it's undeniable that my ethnicity is Chinese. I can't escape that.
The name is interchangeable. You can say Jamaican Chinese or Chinese Jamaican. That's not what's important. What's important is what it represents. And basically, it's what I said before. It represents being like any other immigrant that has immigrated to another country. The new culture that you form is a hybrid culture. You're part Jamaican, you're part Chinese, and well, in my case, I'm part American. I feel very American at the same time.
Like my kids are a whole kettle of fish. I mean, my husband is Filipino, So, and then he has a mother who is Chinese Jamaican, and they go to school and they say, well, you know, I'm not just Chinese.
I'm sure in America, though, they're probably perceived as just being Asian, not Jamaican. Because you can't see what being Jamaican is.
Right.
You know, that's something intangible.
Right.
You know, that's culture. So, you know, it is what it is. It's who you are, who we are.
What does it mean to me to call myself a Chinese Jamaican? Oh, I was born in Jamaica, so I'm a Jamaican. I was born of Chinese ancestry, so I'm now known as Chinese Jamaican. I love Jamaica, but I didn't so care for the people after a while. When a man is hungry and he has no money, they will do anything regardless of how long they've known you for. I got scared of Jamaica, the Jamaicans, and wanted to leave. But I think I will be Chinese Jamaican until I die. Okay?
Hey, my name is Yuki Chin. You guys have just come back from Jamaica and you have an idea of how we lived in Jamaica. What do you think of it?
Don't interview us. We're interviewing you.
My name, Shirley Lolita Wong, Loleta.
My name is Damien Chin. I was born in Kingston, Jamaica.
My name is Robert Hugh. I was born here in Kingston.
Hi, my name is Jordan Linton. I am an anthropologist. I'm African American and I am from Brooklyn, New York.
So my name is Savia McCoy-Torres. I am an anthropologist, a social and cultural anthropologist, and professor of anthropology and Africana studies at Tulane University.
Name, Damien Francis Young.
Hi, I'm Bruce Lo Shusan. I was born in Kingston, Jamaica, and I'm Chinese Jamaican.
Hi, I'm Laura. I am Chinese Jamaican and I was born in Miami, Florida.
Hi! I'm Beverly. I was a Fung before. I got married and I'm Chin now, so my name is Beverly Chin. I was born in Kingston at North Street.
My name is Warren Chin. I was born in Kingston, Jamaica. And what was the last one?
Oh, that was it.
Okay.
maybe come to Chinatown.
Where did you guys meet?
We never met, you know. We were pen
I used to see her.
That should be like the opening for your bowl.
Why we didn't talk about Chinese guild?
Oh yes, that's another value that they teach.
Chinese guild.
Yeah, that should be a whole chapter by itself. Chinese guild.
My dad used to live in Jamaica, but he's not Jamaican, he's Chinese, which confuses me sometimes.
Why? What's confusing about that?
Because sometimes I'm like, wait, are you Jamaican or are you not Jamaican? Because it's kind of the whole nationality thing that I kind of get confused about.